Have you ever stopped to wonder how a totally new style of architecture even comes to be? It's not just about making things look pretty. It's this amazing fusion of cultures, of new technology, and brand new ideas. So today, we're going to open up the Architect's Toolkit and see exactly how one of the world's most stunning architectural styles was built, piece by piece. All right, let's get into it.
I mean, that's a huge question, right? When new rulers and new faiths show up in a place, they don't just put up a few buildings. No, they build symbols of their power. They build new places to worship. They build hubs for the whole community. They are literally building a new world right on top of the old one. So, how on earth do they do it?
Well, you start with a new plan, a completely new set of rules, different materials, and new techniques that really reflect a different way of seeing the world. And that is exactly what happened in India, giving birth to what we now call Indo-Islamic architecture.
So our own blueprint for this explainer comes from this text right here. It lays out all the key features of this incredible architectural fusion. Think of it as our guide to understanding not just what was built, but how, and maybe most importantly, why it was built in such a unique and breathtaking way. Okay, first things first. Let's look at the very foundation, the structural bones of this new style. And I want to be clear, this was not just a minor tweak. This was a complete rethinking of how you build a space. So the big shift is from one system to another. The existing Indian style, which is called Tribute, was all about pillars and beams. Think of it like building with Legos. You've got vertical blocks holding up horizontal blocks. Simple enough. But the incoming Muslim builders brought the arcuate system, and this system used arches to span huge spaces and massive domes to cover them. Suddenly, you could create these enormous, wide-open interiors without needing a whole forest of columns to hold up the roof. And that is the key thing to remember. The arch and the dome, they weren't just pretty decorations. They were a revolutionary piece of engineering that completely changed what was possible. It allowed for buildings that were grander, more spacious, and just more awe-inspiring. It was a totally different way to express space and power. And right here is where we see the fusion start to happen. A perfect example is the chaja. That's this overhanging sunshade. Now, this was a super practical feature, perfect for the hot Indian climate, and it was adopted and integrated right into the new style. It's a brilliant example of the new blueprint adapting to its environment, blending form and function perfectly. And of course, the blueprint had to serve new religious needs. Mosques, for instance, needed a mihrab, a niche in the wall that points towards Mecca for prayer. And new burial customs introduced the Kaaba, or tomb, which led to the creation of these absolutely magnificent mausoleums. The faith itself was literally shaping the architecture. Okay, so we have the structure, the skeleton of the building, but now you've got to give it a soul. So we're going to move from the building's bones to its skin and explore the rich, symbolic world of Indo-Islamic decoration.
Now this was a real game changer. Islamic tradition generally prohibits depicting living beings in religious art, mainly to avoid any form of idolatry. So while Hindu temples were often covered in sculptures of gods, people, and animals, this new style had to find a completely different way to express beauty in the divine.
And the solution they came up with was just brilliant. Instead of figures, the artisans became masters of abstract forms. They used calligraphy to turn verses from the Quran into breathtaking works of art. They wove these incredibly complex geometrical patterns, called arabesque. They carved intricate stone latticework, or jalis, to play with light and air. And they perfected these beautiful stylized floral designs.
And this is where the craftsmanship just goes to a whole other level. Pietra dura. It's the art of inlaying these highly polished, precious and semi-precious stones into marble to create these permanent, jewel-like patterns. It's an art form that takes unbelievable precision, and it really speaks to the luxury and the refinement of the style. But the vision didn't just stop at the building's walls. The Char Bagh, or four-part garden, was a crucial element, especially for tombs. This symmetrical layout, with water channels dividing the garden into 4 sections, was meant to represent the 4 gardens of paradise described in the Quran. The building and the landscape around it were designed as one complete thought.
So what were all these marvels made of? Well, an amazing mix of materials. For strength and structure, they used concrete, lime mortar, and strong local stones like sandstone. But for beauty, for the decorative parts, they used pristine marble, vibrant polychrome tiles, and even precious materials like lapis lazuli. The choice of material was every bit as important as the design itself.
All right, so we've got our structural principles and our decorative palette. We've filled our toolkit. Now let's see how these tools were actually used to create different kinds of buildings, each with a very specific, very important job to do in the empire.
First and foremost, you've got to project strength. Forts were the ultimate symbols of a king's power and authority. These were so much more than just defensive walls. They were the physical manifestation of a new order, designed to completely awe the population and dominate the landscape. And inside or next to these forts, you'd find these massive, towering minars, or minarets. Now sure, their practical function was for the call to prayer, but their incredible height was also a powerful political statement. A giant exclamation point on the skyline, proclaiming the presence of Islam and the might of the ruler, visible for miles and miles. Just think of the Qutb Minar in Delhi. It's a declaration made of stone. Next up, power has to be remembered, right? Tombs during this period were not just quiet places of mourning. They were grand political statements about a dynasty's legacy, about their divine right to rule, built to make sure a leader's name and glory would live on for centuries. These tombs, like the ones for Humayun or Akbar, often became the testing grounds for brand new architectural ideas. Usually set inside a beautiful charbagh garden, they were meant to be an earthly version of paradise, securing the ruler's place in the afterlife while showing off the empire's wealth and artistic skill right here on Earth.
But hey, architecture isn't just for kings and for gods, it's also for the people. And if you want to hold the huge empire together, you need infrastructure. And that's where the humble but absolutely vital sarai came in.
Look, saraikais were so much more than just roadside inns. They were the critical nodes of the entire imperial network. These secure buildings made it possible for merchants to trade, for pilgrims to travel, and for information and armies to move quickly. They were the essential network that kept the lifeblood of the empire, trade and communication flowing. They literally bound the empire together.
So, after we put all these tools together, the structure, the decoration, the purpose, what have we built? What is the lasting legacy of this incredible architectural fusion?
It really boils down to these three core ingredients in the toolkit. First, you've got the engineering revolution of the arch and dome. Then you have the artistic genius of all that intricate, non-figurative decoration. And finally, you have the application of these ideas to create buildings of power, of memory, and of public good. You put those three together, and you get a style that's completely and utterly unique.
And that really brings us to our final thought. Every single arch, every tile, every garden, it tells a story of cultural exchange, of conflict and collaboration, of innovation and adaptation. It's the story of how two very different worlds met and created something totally new, something enduring. It's a story that remains written in stone for all of us to read. So the question is, what do you think that story is telling us?